Hello, everyone, and welcome to Flawless, a music podcast. My name is Liam, and I'm here with my two co-hosts, Grant
Hello there, music fans.
and George.
Hello, music lovers.
Every 100 episodes of Flawless, we decide to come together and have a special episode where instead of nominating one album from one band, we choose a band and we all nominate a different album from the band that we all love. This will be the only time we get to do this because there is only one band where we all love a different album, so we hope you enjoy it. We have a Patreon. You can find us at patreon.com/flawlessamp, where you can back us from as little as $1 a month. And for that, you get early access to our episodes and access to our bonus episodes as well. And we have a Facebook group as well. It's called Flawless Friends and Family. You can check us out online. There's a link in the show notes. And there we talk about the upcoming episodes and all stuff Flawless albums. And you can let us know if you like our episodes or not. A little bit of housekeeping as well before we get started. This is our 100th episode.
Unreal.
And doesn't actually mean, what is going to happen is we're going to take a short break after this 100th episode. So this will be the last episode we publish this year. We've been going for 3 years straight, fortnightly. So it's been a bit of a push. It's been a lot of effort. So we are giving ourselves a couple of months off. And we will be back bright and fresh and sparkly in 2022.
Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
That's it.
Absolutely. I think we've done our dues.
I think
100
so.
episodes, right?
Yes.
But I'm disappointed that he reckons we wouldn't find another band that we could be unanimous on that they are actually a supergroup. But we've got 199 to find one.
To think of one.
Yes.
Another one.
Yes.
I thought we'd already compared notes and we didn't have another one.
But we were young.
Yeah,
That was years.
heady
That was
days
literally
of
years
years
ago.
ago, yeah.
That was literally years ago.
This is true.
yeah. So because the concept of this episode where we all pick one album from a band, we actually came up with on the very first, like the first time the three of us sat down and had a chat, is like that could be like a special episode. So this idea is 3 years in the making.
Correct.
And we've finally got to
It
it.
was my entrance exam.
Yeah.
Which album and why? Yeah. What a question. And we haven't even mentioned the band.
No. So,
Specifically.
welcome to episode number 100.
Unreal.
100!
Well done,
OMG.
They said we'd never make it, except nobody ever said that because
Yes.
everyone seems to be fine with us doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
They're interacting with us quite well.
Yes.
I'm enjoying that. That's nice.
No one
But
seems to be against
who would have
us.
thought we'd have made it to 100 episodes when we started in the Edge at the
Yes.
State Library?
Yeah.
And we were using their equipment and it was really, really cool. And then Liam decided that he had disposable income and went, I want to buy all the best podcasting equipment there is and I'm going to learn all the editing
I've
there
got
is.
this. Yeah.
Yeah,
I've
I'm
got
gonna
this.
I'm gonna nail this because I don't have enough hobbies.
Yes.
And then he turned Flawless into something even bigger, and we've had countless guests.
Yes.
And we've gone through literally up until this episode 99 albums.
Actually, more than that.
Oh,
because
wait,
on
because
Girls
of Girls
Rock,
Rock.
we did like 8
There you go.
albums per episode.
Oh my
And then on
goodness.
the one where we did, I can't remember their name now, the one I went down to Melbourne, Charlie Bliss. I was going to say Candy Bliss, but it's Charlie Bliss. They did 2 in an episode. We did a shared thing where they shouted about 2. So it's more than 100 albums.
More than 100, and to be fair, and to give him his credit, Liam is the only one that has shown up to every single episode.
Correct.
Because due to life, sickness, unwellness, etc., Liam is the only one that's like the stalwart there, here for Flawless.
Owns it. Mr.
waving the
100.
flag. Yeah, Mr.
Yes.
100.
But
Say that.
also,
Mr. Centurion.
if we were still at the edge, I don't think we'd have made it to 100. It was too hard to
hard.
coordinate all 3 of us. Like, you listen back to those first episodes, and there's more episodes with one of us not there than with all 3 of us there, because we had a time that we were locked into.
It's true.
And if someone said, "Oh, I'm not feeling well," it was just like, "Well, you can't
Tough.
be on this episode. We've got guests lined
Gotta
up, or
move.
even if it's just the 3 of us, we were on our way. We had to go."
Yeah,
Whereas
we
now
have
with-
had duos.
Yeah,
Which do we count them as
Duets.
flawless or not?
and solos. So there's one right from the start where it was just me and a guest.
Really?
Yeah.
So me and Dom Miller. And that was back also when we were getting people for one of their albums they'd pick from our shortlist. So we would sort of have their backs in the
Yes.
episode. Whereas now we've just sort of thrown that away because it doesn't really hurt
Sure.
that much for them to just dive into it.
Yeah.
And because he picked an album from my shortlist for one of his episodes, it was like, well, the 2 of us both think this is flawless. It's like a tick. Everybody agrees from the start.
Yeah.
Whether it officially counts or not, I leave that up to the internet to decide.
Yeah, sure. The World Wide Web.
Hey,
Yeah.
is-
And we did it in the library as well. South Brisbane? Was it?
Yeah. So then we moved to Garden City
Garden City,
Library at
was
the time because it was big and open and
Oh,
quiet.
we did.
Yeah.
And you were once in a gym.
We
Yes,
were
I was going to
once in a
say
gym.
we did it in the gym once.
We did it in
did
the
an
Jim and Grant's
episode
building
in the
because we got all the way to Garden City and I realised I'd left the key at home.
It's good
And I was
times.
way out on the north side, so there was no way I could drive all the way north side and come back in time to do it. So Grant kindly offered up his gym. And if you have a look on our Instagram, there's a photo that was with Cara.
Yeah.
Where we piled
cool.
into the gym and did our thing.
So
What's the name of her pub again?
Her Netherworld, one of the owners of Netherworld, and also her podcast is Cruising for a Review,
Yeah,
where she
it's-
reviews Tom Cruise movies. And she is eager because he's got a bunch lined up ready to go come out, and I think she wants them for her new episodes. But there's COVID is
Come
obviously
on,
putting
Tom.
pauses on everything,
Put
so
up your socks.
she's got all her things lined up ready to go. But she just needs those movies to come out so she can start.
So Flawless has been on quite the journey to come to the 100th episode.
It has.
Well, after the gym, we've been here, haven't we? I mean,
Yeah.
you know, in
And
the
we've
main,
made friends. Aw.
So
lots of friends.
I think since you moved into the city, we decided it was easier to do it here because everybody could get here. So
Yep.
we've
That's
been doing it
true.
at George's
So-
place ever since, except for a couple of detours out to my place in the valley, just north of the valley.
So we're Brisbane centric, but we've had international guests too.
We have.
Ever since we got the P8
Yes.
as well, we've had people from America join us, and so oh man, what a
the
journey
UK.
it's been! Like for a podcast, and you know what? My partner actually doesn't really listen to music, but really enjoys listening to our podcast, talking about the passion we have for the music.
Cool.
So I think that's like testament to what we've been doing
Yeah.
for these like 100 episodes.
Totally.
Just a random, the last stats that you referenced was 30,000 listens.
Yes.
Have you got anything more recent? Because I still find that as an unbelievable number.
I think we're up to between 32 and 33,000 now.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah,
That's
lots
really
of people
cool.
out there. It's one of those things where you can't compare numbers to other podcasts.
Sure.
Because some people are like, yeah, I got, I did 100 episodes and I got 1,000 listens because they're so super niche, but they,
Yes.
they're targeting that certain audience. And then some of them are like, we've got advertising, or, when people are talking about advertising on podcasts, they're like, unless you've got 50,000 listens a month, don't even bother
Don't
about
even-
it
yeah.
because it's, you won't get the reach to be able to get money out of it. So there's, we're not at 50,000 a month, but we're not at,
Yet.
we're a fair way from that, but fingers crossed we can get there one day.
Let's not have adverts.
No, we actually have had a few people reach out to us and say, a little bit of advertising on the front, even before we start talking about levels or whatever. And it's just not something that I've ever been super keen on. Plus, one of the things that people tell us they like about the podcast is that we actually play the music. We do have a license and we're also within copyright requirements, definitely for Australia. We're a little bit dodgy outside of that. But one of the other things is there's no point coming after us because we don't make any money. Whereas as soon as we start having advertising and running it as a business and making money off other people's copyright, then
could be a problem.
Yeah. So I'd rather just not have the problem and just be listener funded, which is awesome. And thank you to all of our Patreon people who back us.
All three of you.
4.
Sorry.
There was a new guy on Twitter who literally tweeted, I'm going to listen to an episode and depending on how much I like it, that's what level I'm going
And
to
I'd
back you
like
on.
that or something, yeah.
Yep. And I was like, haha, whatever. Next day, we were backed for an amount.
That's
So,
awesome.
that was super cool. Thank you to that
That's
person whose
really
name I
cool.
can't remember right now. But yeah, at work last week, we had a bit of an exercise where we were writing down things that we like about people in the program, like not work things, but like just personal things and letting them know. And someone who I'd worked with said that he likes our podcast. And I didn't even know he listened. So Steve, hopefully you're listening to this episode. Thank you for that note. I got it. It was great. And I didn't even know you were listening.
That's awesome.
It is awesome.
People love it when I say I do a podcast, and
Oh.
they're like, "What's it about?" And I'm
Yeah.
like, "It's music," and
Yeah.
they're like, "Ooh!" Suddenly, I've piqued my interest.
Mm.
And then I get into like the whole spiel about what we do. Then they get really excited, and then they scroll through and go and find their favorite artists that we've covered, and they'll go and listen to that episode, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what I really enjoy. The fact that we've had so many different genres that
Yeah.
like anyone can go and find something that they can relate to.
Yeah.
So it's been really fun.
It has been fun.
Tiring though.
Yes, it has been a
So
lot
many
of work.
notes.
And it's so many notes. And I don't know if you guys keep yours or put them in a book or something, George. We've talked about you handwrite your notes. We should be putting them in a book at the end.
Yeah. Maybe I'll start now.
Yeah. Mine are all Google Docs printed, so it's not as pretty.
Mine is illegible.
Yes,
So
No.
never
that's
mind.
the other problem.
Yes. Well, this is very exciting. So
Cool.
where do we go from here, Lou?
Well, where do we go from here? The words are coming out all weird. Where are you now? And that might tell you we are going to talk about a band. Finally, 3 white people get to tell the world what they think about one of the greatest rock bands of all time, Radiohead.
Thank you. Boom.
So,
Wow.
Thank
Sure.
you for picking up on my reference.
yeah, I wasn't sure if
no.
you did that deliberately or if it
Yeah,
was.
totally.
That was
So,
so
yeah,
good.
that's awesome. Yes, because
Yeah.
I've got my notes in front of me and I'm like, I'm ready. I'm
Nice.
ready for you.
Ready
Come
for
on.
it. Okay.
Yeah.
We will do a little bit of a recap on the three of us from Radiohead, but George, would you like to tell us what album you're nominating first of all?
Okay, so we are chronologically going in order,
Mm-hmm.
and I am nominating the Bends Radiohead March '95
Yep.
as my number 1 Radiohead album.
Awesome. I'm chronologically next.
Yes,
You
you
are.
are.
We are going
are.
to skip over the 3 albums that many people usually talk about being flawless, which is OK Computer, Kid A, and Amnesiac. And I'm going to jump straight to, I don't even have what year it was released written down.
2003.
2003's Hail to the Thief.
Are you such a dreamer to put the world to rights? I stay home forever, but two always makes a five.
Yes.
There you go.
And Grant,
Last but not least.
chronologically last, but definitely not least.
No, not at all. I have nominated In Rainbows.
How come I end up where I started? How come I end up where I went? Won't take my eyes off the ball again. You reel me out, then you cut the string.
Which was 2007.
Think so.
Yes, that's it.
Was it
Yep.
right? I didn't write it down.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yep. 10th of October,
So
2007.
yes, 3 albums.
Cool.
And not the ones that are usually spoken of as or proposed as flawless,
No.
or necessarily as rated amongst the reviewers.
So this is the thing. This was it's a very telling that it's 100 episodes and we're talking about In Rainbows,
Unbelievable.
Grant, because when we were looking for someone to be on the podcast,
Yes.
and you were recommended by someone,
We,
by our friend Sarah.
So hello, Sarah. Miss you, Sarah.
The case that she made was that you would go to bat for In Rainbows over any other Radiohead album as being flawless,
Yeah.
and we were like, "That's awesome. That is that is not a choice that most people would make. Let's meet this guy," and it all tumbled in from there. So it's very
Absolutely.
closing the loop on Flawless, the genesis of Flawless.
Mm.
And OK Computer is the only one that I have on vinyl. But that's, not the one that I brought forward as my
No.
flawless album.
Mm-hmm.
It was still the Bends.
Okay, George,
Hello.
tell us how you discovered Flawless as an English person, being alive in 1995 when the Bends came out. And I mean,
What an album.
they were big on 93, but they were, I think they might have exploded a bit more in 95. Or you can
Totally.
tell us.
You were there.
What was their big hit from Pablo Honey?
Great.
Creep.
Of course it was. And as a disillusioned youth that was watching MTV when I was like 8, 9 years old, like, well, probably 9. This really awkward looking guy with like bleached hair
And awesome teeth.
like, yeah, and one like that side of his face, I was unsure if he was deliberately. It was all very confusing. Battered out creep. I'm a weirdo, and I was like, I can relate. So in this whole scenario, I was like, I know what you're about. This is awesome. But I didn't own Pablo Honey because I was only like 9 at the time. But then the Bends came out. And when the Bends came out, I didn't notice the first few singles. But I did go and spend my pocket money on the album. So I would have been, because it was
girl.
March 95, so I had my birthday money from turning 10. And I went and bought the Bends because, and then I listened to it, and then I got to Street Spirit at the end and said, this is my song.
Yeah.
This is my song
Really,
from now on. Yeah, like pretty much. So then the singles, I wasn't really listening to much on the radio, so I didn't really notice some of the singles, but I did capture them on MTV. So the videos for Fake Plastic Trees, I think he's being pushed around in a shopping cart. So that was really cool.
Salt like a white supermarket with big pastel colours on all the products.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that was like really awesome for me. Then the video for Just came out, and where that one man in a suit is laid down on the ground and everyone's like talking to him in subtitles, and he's just like, you don't want to know, you don't want to know, you can't handle, that whole, you can't handle the truth kind of thing. And it was just like really impactful.
Just the disillusioned youth of like, I know a thing that's going to make the world shut down, but you'd never understand. And you don't, and if I tell you what it is, and then at the end he tells them and they do all lie down, and you think, yeah, that's the most meaningful thing ever. And now looking back at it at 41-year-old, I'm like, that's a little much. But as like, when you're in that age bracket, you're like, this is it. This is these are my guys.
Absolutely. And then they brought out the video for Street Spirit, where they did the slow-mo over quick filming, all in black and white. There's like ballerina dancers and dogs and like children and stuff, and it was just really impactful. So I was like, these are my people. They are weird, like totally weird, and I'm loving this album. So when I put it on and I listened to Planet Telex from the beginning, I was like, okay, I'm in for this journey, and that's where I started. So that's how I got into Radiohead, through MTV, through Creep. Awesome. And then picked up the album and went from there.
And you didn't think that Pablo Honey was flawless?
No, there's some stuff in there that is still too raw for me, I think. Like at that time, especially probably because I didn't really get into the grungy stuff quite so much. But Pablo Honey wasn't so much, whereas this one had Rolling Stone described it as having a mix of sonic guitar anthems and striking ballads. And that's why it landed with me, because it had those jump up and down, sing along, and then the sway along, sing along kind of songs on it. So this is why it's been a regular on my playlist. So this is why I chose that.
Awesome.
This particular album, the guitar-driven album.
Grant,
how did you get into Radiohead? I know it wasn't I wasn't through In Rainbows, I'm sure.
No.
That wasn't your first exposure to Radiohead?
No. Being a little bit older than George, certainly had heard Creep. And then I was at boarding school in a place called Grahamstown. And 1995, you pick up this someone at school had it.
Mm-hmm.
You pick it up and it's got this weird shaped head thing, and you're like, okay, well, who are these guys? I wouldn't absolutely not have connected the two. And it would have been the hits in the main that would have, High and Dry. I mean, geez, come on, guys, that would have really resonated. And I bought the CD as well, in South Africa, because it is, it resonated so much, and it's hard to. I mean, like we talk about a flawless and a framework of skippable tracks. Find me one here that I'm, don't want to go to. So, 95. On the back of Creep, Didn't really listen to Pablo Honey much at all, but a friend had it, and I bought it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if, I think it certainly wouldn't have been that year, but I have this in my collection. Yeah.
Nice.
How about you, Liam?
I was the same as you, George, in that I was seeing video clips on MTV, so I wasn't really listening to proper radio. I was listening to a lot of pop radio stuff, and they weren't on that. But I remember Creep being on there a little bit,
Yeah, it was.
but I didn't hear it.
But the radio edit, it's nice when he drops the F-bomb, isn't it?
I know. So that was the other thing I was going to say is, like, for the first few years, certainly my exposure to Creep was MTV and pop radio, which was the sanitized edit where he doesn't drop the F-bomb at all, and they even cut out that line altogether. So then when I finally heard it on the actual album for the first time and started hearing it on radio stations that weren't afraid to drop the proper version, I was like, oh my God. And I could see instantly where I was like, okay, so now I know why it was really popular with young people, because it's like, it's the F-bomb on the radio. Who doesn't love that? Didn't hear much about the Bends at all. I was same as you, George. I was watching clips, seeing clips on MTV, Just and Fake Plastic Trees and that sort of stuff. It wasn't until Paranoid Android came out that I actually started hearing them on the. By that time, I was listening to Triple J, and they made a huge deal about Paranoid Android. Like, listen to this. This is a huge song. This is going to be like a song of the year style song. You have to listen to it. It's amazing. All their directors of music and stuff were doing little pieces on the radio about how important it was and how great it was. It was on. I remember. Australian kids will know there was a TV show called Recovery at the time, which was Saturday mornings. All the bands that I've talked about, Australian bands, were all on there. It was just like a big studio, 3 or 4 rows of kids up in a stand, and then there were like live bands playing, and they had a really cool host called Dylan Lewis, who was like kooky and a bit crazy, and it was just really cool. And they played the film clip for Paranoid Android as another big like, hey, everyone check this out, Radiohead are back, they're this thing now, it's going to be amazing. But then, because it's 9 a.m. on a Saturday morning, they're G-rated, and there's stuff that happens in the Paranoid Android where the mermaids are naked, or topless. So even though it's hand-drawn, they're not allowed to show topless women at 9 o'clock. So they had to put a screen up to say, hey guys, we can't show you this, but here's a description of what's happening, because it's this amazing video. And that's what. So I started hearing them on the radio. At that point, I got OK Computer. I went backwards. And then I've got every album they've put out and like everything they've put out ever since then, which became a lot easier once they got off their record label and they just started putting stuff out as pay what you want.
Yes.
But we'll talk about that in a bit more down the line. So yeah, when loved OK Computer, loved Kid A and Amnesiac when they came out, like that whole, they completely changed their style, but they still kept they changed the instruments, but they kept their style, worked really well. And then just following it through has been really awesome.
That's awesome. So do you want to describe who the band is?
Yes.
Sure.
So
I figure one of us should do it.
how amazing is it, before I do that, it's the same 5 guys. So they formed in 1985. So they're 30.
The literal year I was born.
Yeah. So they're the same age as George. They've been together 36 years, and it's the same 5 guys who are in the band. They've had, obviously, people come in and do stuff with them, and they've got an extra touring member now. But Radiohead's lineup in 1985 was Tom York on vocals, guitar, piano, keyboards, Johnny Greenwood, guitar, keyboards, the Ornd Martenot, which I will talk about in a bit, Colin Greenwood, his brother, on bass, Ed O'Brien on guitar, effects and backing vocals, and Philip Selway on drums and percussion. And they've had Clive Dreamer with them since 2011, also doing drums and percussion.
And various people on strings.
And various people, so different people tend to do the string parts and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And they've had different producers, mostly the same producer.
From
these
85,
days.
and they land like late 90s or mid 90s. They get.
I can't think of
popular,
another
right?
band who is still the same 5 members. Like, you know, usually some of them, even if they keep the core front group, you know, you might get
someone
a drummer
bugs
or
out.
yeah,
there.
like
of course.
like it's, you know, and you're thinking like this, they are and became one of the biggest bands in the world. So they were touring lots, they were doing stuff all the time. Everybody was always paying attention to them. Almost inevitably, someone at that point goes, "This is too much for me. I want to have a family. I want to spend time with my family. I can't. You know, I'm going to choose.
My
Make that
priorities
choice."
have changed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But these guys just no. It's just been those same 5 guys the whole time. I find that amazing.
While we're on that, have either of you seen them live?
Do you want to go first?
Yes.
Yes, you want to go first, and
yes, I've seen them live at a music festival back in the UK, but I was in the nosebleed section because everyone was all up at the front, and I was like, it's too late and I'm too tired, and I'm just going to be like sat on the grass looking down and just enjoying the soundscape that they are creating. Like, it would be awesome to have been younger and all up at the front and like throwing myself
if you were
around.
spent, that's okay.
I was totally spent.
So when? What year? Around about?
Probably would have somewhere between 97 and 2011. So I can't remember. I should have done my research.
Do you know what what were some of the songs you might have seen?
No,
Or
literally nothing.
Literally
I can
nothing.
remember
Fair
I was
enough.
at a festival and I was spent.
Yeah.
And I was like, they are very good. And I
Yeah.
really enjoy them throwing themselves
Hashtag
around.
fact.
Yes.
And I really enjoy it's Johnny who like crawls around the floor,
Yeah.
like playing with all of his pedals and doing all that interesting stuff.
So
So
good.
it must have been after Kid A.
Okay.
Yeah, it was after Kid A. So he was crawling around the floor doing loads of the like electro stuff and
Mm-hmm.
everything. But it was like a really interesting experience.
Yeah.
Cool. Do you remember the festival specifically or what it was called?
It was either Reading, Leeds, or Glastonbury.
Okay. Well,
So
sure.
pick one of those.
Yeah, the big,
Well,
the
pick-
big three.
Okay. All right.
Cool.
Good.
How about you, Grant?
And me? No, unfortunately not. No. I don't think I'm not sure they've ever toured South Africa, and so I would have got here 06, and I don't know how many times they would have toured here between 06 and now.
I can tell you, it's been the once.
Wow.
And that was the show that I was at. So
Really?
they've been to Australia just Brisbane, three times.
Yeah.
They played the Roxy in '94, which was a venue that no longer exists, sadly. Festival Hall in 1998, which like also doesn't exist, but I at least went to that one a couple of times. I never went to the Roxy. And then in 2012, they played the Brisbane Entertainment Centre.
Really?
And I was at that show. And it was amazing.
And you know that I wasn't in Brisbane at the time.
Okay.
I was in
There you
Sydney.
go.
However, they would
That's-
have been they would have
they
played,
played
Sydney,
Sydney, yes.
and I still missed it. Wow.
So it's the interesting thing was they played for me. I'm just going to tell everyone you'll find this very interesting. They played the same year that Weezer played Australia, and Weezer was another. So they obviously hadn't been in
Yeah.
Australia for 14 years. Weezer was another band that hadn't been to Australia since the late 90s, and it was always like, oh, every time festival lineup started coming out, it's like, oh, someone's going to bring Weezer out. Weezer are still huge. They,
Yes.
they should bring them out. No one ever did, so Weezer just did their own tour. So they played the Entertainment Centre as well, and I'd been waiting since the late 90s to see them as well, so I went along and saw them as well, and it was cool, but they were just four guys doing their thing. They had the big W and lights behind them that lit up in certain highlight moments, but other than that, it was cool to see songs that I hadn't seen played live
Sure.
get played live, but it was kind of just like, okay, that was four guys doing their thing, very experienced, but there wasn't that extra element to it. And then you got Radiohead, and that was just like, it just blew my mind how awesome they were. Everything was so well coordinated. They had like a huge stage set up with all the different parts. They had like all sorts of screens all around the place. All the screens did
a
lots
show,
of different
like-
things. It was a real, like they put a lot of
Effort.
and thought into, we're the biggest band in the world. Let's put on a show that befits the big. And obviously, Weezer aren't the biggest band in the world, but I was kind of still thinking, you haven't been to Australia
They're
for
big.
15 years. I was expecting something, and I got just them. Was with Radiohead, and that's why there's a Scroobius Pip song where he goes through like a list of bands and goes, the Beatles, just a band,
Yeah.
such and such, just a band, and Radiohead is like just a band. I'm like, yeah, just a band as in they make music, and that's there's the meaning we attach to that is entirely our own, and is that important or isn't it? But they're not just a band in the same way. They're like your local 4-piece down at the pub is just a band. Like they know, and I'm sure they hate the label the biggest band in the world. I'm sure they've that's not something that they seek out or they enjoy, but they're like, this is us, this is who we are. Let's give people a show that's fitting of what they come to expect from us.
So it was everything you'd hoped for. and
It was
more.
amazing, and they didn't even play a lot of the stuff that I was really hoping they would, because by 2012 they'd released.
They've moved on.
Yeah, so by 2012 they'd released everything up to and including the King of Limbs, so the one after In Rainbows. And so you could play a big hooky rock set with all of the stuff from the Bends and stuff from OK Computer and just have like
Easy.
a real rock show, but they didn't. They played the more introverted and the more quiet and synthy and loopy stuff, and it was still amazing.
I watched a video of them playing the national anthem
Mm-hmm.
on SNL. And it was just epic, like
Yeah.
watching them throw themselves around and like fuck about with pedals and
Yeah.
do all sorts of stuff. And then they have this 7-piece horn set, who are all going, boop, boop in
Yeah.
the background, and they're all enjoying themselves as well. Like the horns felt like they were part of Radiohead. It
Yeah.
wasn't like, oh, you're just in the back, you just do your thing. And even though it was one song on SNL, they're like, we're putting everything into this, and now we're done. Thank
Yeah.
you. And so they're really good live, even in like that televised context.
Cool.
So we agree this was a good band to pick.
Yes, I think we all.
Well, we from 3 years ago, and we've got to get to another 100 before I think we align ourselves that there might be another. As I said, I'm disappointed that Liam thinks that there might not be. I feel like I've got a quest now. I've got 99 opportunities to think about
Cool.
what else could
think-
unite us.
Listen to a bunch of Queens of the Stone Age albums and maybe Trail of Dead. Do you have a Trail of Dead Flawless album?
Yes.
Yeah. So listen.
And
listen
interesting,
to a
I
bunch of
thought
listen to a
Queens
bunch
of the
of
Stone
Queens of the
Age.
Stone Age
I
and
thought
Train
you
of-
might.
Trail and
Okay.
Trail of the Dead albums, and if you can
Okay.
find a flawless one in there, we'll be another goer.
Okay.
But you know, I can't find a Beatles album.
No, I can't find a Beatles album,
No, there's no
wouldn't be able
flawless
to.
Beatles albums.
and I don't because
Is that a
we're
bad
going,
thing?
We're going off topic here, but I've never really gotten hugely into the Beatles as an album. Like I always know they've got a huge body of work, and I love so much of their body of work. But I've never really sat down and gone, okay, this is this album, this is the next album. This also partly because they just released them like so often. They were putting out one every year or two every year. It's just like I think of their work as just a massive conglomerate of songs rather than a series of individual albums. So yeah, I wouldn't have any flawless Beatles albums.
There we go. So we're gonna still quest.
We've got time. We've got time.
Yeah, we've got 3 years.
We're
It's
gonna
not-
craft.
So let's
We had their second single was a split from the band, and it was High and Dry and Planet Telex on a split AA single.
Wow.
What a fucking good choice! But also, you could have separated them out.
Yeah, because Paul, frequent previous guest and Patreon backer, the Benz is one of his favorite albums, and one of his favorite things is like there was it's a 12 track album,
With
and
six-
seven of
seven
the
singles.
songs were singles releases. It's like, which once again it's such a weird thing for Radiohead when you think about them down the line. Is like this
Correct.
idea of like singles are just promotional things. They're just excuses for you to try and get radio play, and it's very commercial. But I think at that stage they were still enjoying making the videos, and also this was their first one on EMI. So which
Oh, it's still on Parlophone, wasn't it?
was it? Are they still on Parlophone? Was it OK Computer that they went to EMI? Anyway, well, someone can yell at us online about that. But I think that was
Research opportunity.
yeah. There's only so many notes we could take about this. It's like 8 pages worth of notes. So yeah, I think they've certainly, as they've gone on, they're like less interested in making videos and doing promotional singles and stuff like that, and more just it's very weird for a band like them to have that many singles.
But to go from being famous for being creep and then to release stuff that's actually quite twinkly and sweet
Yes.
was a really nice kind of shift with their singles. So starting with My Iron Lung, that came out first. But then High and Dry, Planet Telex came out, and they're just really pretty songs. And Fake Plastic Trees is just a really pretty song.
Yeah.
Just is kicking back in to being like a belter. Street Spirit, like they released that as a single. What are
Yeah.
you doing, mates?
Yeah.
Like you're having a laugh, and then they're finally
Yeah,
like,
having a laugh.
we're doing the bends. Like
Yeah.
we might as well. This is the aha moment. This is the song, the bends, the album, the bends. It's how we're going to finish. And that is the way they released their singles. But they did that over the course of 94 to 96.
Yeah, so
They
2
were
years worth of singles.
2 years worth before they released OK Computer.
Yeah, so My Iron Lung that they open with, I think, is like it's not quite Britpop, but there's elements of it in there. It's not quite grunge, but there's elements of it in there. So I think it's a really good choice for a new single. Like, we're not just going to be the guys who have Creep, and we're not going to be all our songs like are those love songs / self-demeaning ones. But also we've got the elements that the stuff that's really popular on the radio right now, which was Britpop and grunge. So yeah, awesome choice.
So obviously none of us listened to this for the first time when we came to the album, but coming to it, knowing that we had to deep dive into it, what was your feeling, Liam, when you were like, I'm going to have to listen to the Bends in the kind of mindset of Flawless?
I had The Bends is probably my favorite Radiohead album. So I picked Hail to the Thief, and one of the reasons I picked that is because that's one that not many people think of as being flawless, and I want to make the case for it and try and get more people to listen to it. But I think The Bends is probably my favorite Radiohead album. So, and it always makes appearances. So I almost didn't have to take any notes for The Bends. I just looked through the track listing and I went, yep, I know how all of those ones go. I wrote down a couple of lyrics, but I knew the lyrics in my head. I just had to write down which song they were in. So, for example, My Iron Lungs got that bit at the end where he goes, and if you're frightened, you can be frightened. You can be, it's okay.
Oh, so good.
And I knew that
With
that
the
lyric.
whole shift change in the whole song.
And I knew that lyric was on this album somewhere. I just had to remember which song it was on. So I listened to it once through and went, oh yeah, it's on this song. Blah. But apart from that, I barely had to make any notes for this. This is one of the ones of all the ones we've covered that I probably know as good as any of the other ones.
But when he's singing those lyrics, you don't know whether to believe him or not.
No. Yeah.
But, like, you could be frightened, it's okay. Is it okay
Is it though?
Is it, Tom?
Yeah, but it's him.
Yeah, so it totally works.
And is he talking to, because he's got this withering, sarcastic tone all the way through. So if you think about people who are on his side versus the people he's angry at, if you're saying, is he saying you can be frightened like to people like us who are on his side, going it's okay to be frightened about the state that the world's in, or is he saying if you're frightened that we're against the people that he's against, we're about to stand up and we're about to hopefully fight back against you. You should be frightened, sort of stuff. Like, which side is he singing it to? Super cool. It's like, it's just like it's 10 words. It's not some huge thing that you have to really try and deep dive into and unpack into. And the way his gentle lyric on, like his gentle vocal on that is just, we'll say it over and over again, but he's a master vocalist in all areas, and it was just it's amazing.
He does really beautiful things, which is why I really like Nice Dream, where it's really sweet and it's so low. There's like all those synthy trickles, and there's like about 16 bars of just like really pretty instrumental, like in the middle. And he wants to help us to kind of be happy. So in the Nice Dream, there's the backing vocals, if you think that you're strong enough, if you think you belong enough, like repeated over and over into that solo explosion, and all that percussion, everything comes in. It's just like, I can hear the guitar solos in my head right now.
That's the thing. That was my thing as well. I barely need to listen to it to do the research on this song. I was like, yep, I know how all these songs go.
Yes. Well, we've been listening to them for some time now.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes. So, but then on the quiet one, when I bought a CD player where you could pick songs and put one song on repeat, and you didn't have to listen to it all, I used to put Bulletproof, I Wish I Was, that really slow song. I used to just put it on repeat sometimes when I needed to be somber.
Yeah, it's just big open spaces. Like, a lot of the rest of it is quite jagged guitar. Like, the rest of the album is quite angsty guitar stuff. But yeah, there's just a couple of songs there that is like this big, nice and open spaces stuff. And I think it almost starts giving you a clue from where, they're going to lean more into the soundscape stuff as their career goes on.
And he also says,
Wax me, mold me, beat the pins and stab them in. You have turned me into this. Just wish that it was bulletproof.
like a little voodoo doll that's taking all the suffering, and it's like, oh, sweetheart, come here.
Because the other fun thing too about the number of singles they've got on there is two of the ones that I love are Bones and Black Star. And they could have been singles. I could absolutely hear them being played on the radio as well. Like, they could have legitimately gone.
We've taken so long to talk
singles.
about Black Star.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something that Black Star does that I've never seen before or heard since, and I'm surprised more bands don't do it. It fades in. It fades in media res. Not like one instrument, another instrument. No.
Twins!
We're all playing. Like you've all these songs that have fade outs, and this is the only one that I've ever heard that like full band fade in. I was like, why is this not? That's so awesome. Why am not? And then it even cuts out, so it's even like it's not like they just keep going.
Reverse.
Like this, it's so cool.
It is, and then it goes punchy, like that. It's that kind of. It reminded me of long distance touring, where he is talking about trying to stay awake, but it isn't 58 hours since I last slept with you. And he says it in that way that's like heart wrenching.
Yeah.
You know, like it's like 58 hours doesn't sound like long, but when you're that far away from someone, it can really hit you in the feels. So we go from Black Star, then we jump over, and then we end on Street Spirit, which is why I thought it was a really like plucky decision to have that really like bold Black Star, and then ending on Street Spirit, like with our movement through, with our grungy tracks between, and then ending on something so sweet and melodic.
So Tom York says of Street Spirit, it's our purest song, but I didn't write it. It wrote itself. We were just its messengers, its biological catalysts. So it's just them, like a natural expression of space and streets and all this, you know, it's really, very awesome. So this was, the Bends was produced by John Leckie, with extra production by the band, and then Nigel Godrich, who would go on to be their long-time producer. He produced everything since after this album. He was just like, there's stuff in the other albums. I saw some, but I didn't write them all down. But like, where they would even go and try and get another producer, work with him for a little while, and then go, okay, this isn't working. Can we just get Nigel back? And we'll just keep working with Nigel, because it was just, they've got simpatico spirit that just understands what they're trying to do, and works really well with them.
But you need somebody that understands the sound that you're trying to make.
Yes.
And you need to gel with them no matter where you are. Especially because as a band, they've transitioned, like their sound has changed completely from Pablo Honey to where they are now. They create a different soundscape. So it's like from being those grungy, plucky 90s misfits to being this biggest rock band right now, like touring the world, doing all this incredible stuff. They've made an incredible journey to do it. And so if you're lucky enough to go and see them and try not to be spent.
Yeah.
I suppose.
And Stanley Donwood did the art for this with Tom York for this, and has produced all the artwork ever since as well. So they really...
A family now.
They find their people, and they'd go, we'll just stick with the people that we know and work really well with.
Because they went in somewhere specifically to look for something, but then they found a mannequin on the floor, like one of those CPR mannequins on the floor, and took a picture of it and went, let's use that, and use that on the front cover of the Bends, and it works really well. But to me, it's synonymous. But I guess if you don't know what you're expecting, it's pretty easy to be like, what should I expect from a mannequin's face, or distorted on the front of the front cover? So
So we talked about the film clip for Just, but I think the music, it deserves a mention on its own as well. Like just it's coming out of Nice Dream. So Nice Dream holds this really nice spot in the middle of the album. Like it's just a bit of a breather after 5. Even High and Dry and Fake Plastic Trees, even though they're a bit softer, they're still quite intense. Whereas Nice Dream's like just that breather in the middle one. We've had that before with an album, like especially if it's on a vinyl, where like this is the moment you're going to switch the sides, and then just kicks in with that acoustic on the start.
Couple of chords, bro.
Just a couple of
4 chords to glory.
Yeah. And
Come
then
on.
Just Johnny Greenwood's just wailing on that guitar all the way through the song. It's just amazing.
And rock club sing along to that chorus all the time.
Yeah.
And they'll point at each other saying, "You do it to yourself," and they'll
You
point.
do.
That's a terrible thing to say, but yes.
Yeah, but
it
it's
shouldn't
true.
be an uplifting
That's what
thing.
they say. But they still do to this day. So from '95, they're still doing that in rock clubs now with Radiohead tracks, which is awesome.
So I think Just is probably It's hard to pick a top 5 like Radiohead songs, but if I had to, I think Just would definitely be in my top 5, because it's so perfectly crafted, and it goes for nearly 4 minutes, but it never feels like it. It feels like it's quite a short, sharp song, but it's just all those beautiful parts, and then the film clip as well, which is great, and always great to see young Tom. A lot of the film clips, he's sort of thrashing himself around while they're playing, and he does it a lot in this clip, and it's really cool.
So it's pretty all round good record.
Yes.
We're a pitch. I'm conscious that we've got time here on 43 minutes.
That's right.
40
We'll
minutes?
do all the pictures at the end. We'll do all the pictures at the end.
Is
yes,
that the plan?
That's
Sorry.
the plan.
Forgive
Sorry, I should have told everybody the plan. Yeah, we'll do a picture at the
I might have
end.
missed that.
Grant, any songs off the bends that you want to touch on?
Oh,
before
Black
we-
Star, certainly it's just massive.
Mhm.
And, we've just spoken about Just as well. I think Fake Plastic Trees and Street Spirit are difficult not to just touch on the feelies, is what did you call them?
The
Feels?
feels.
The feels. And of course, High and Dry. I mean, this probably the big takeaway track.
Huge falsetto vocals.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've played that before.
He was convinced. Oh, nice. He was convinced to try to start singing falsetto by watching Jeff Buckley.
Ah,
I saw it, found in my research that he looked at Jeff Buckley and was like, I want to be like him.
Yeah,
And that's what, he
not
sort of
a
started
bad
putting up.
idol. Not
No,
gonna
if
lie.
you're going to aim for somebody.
sure.
So,
That's cool.
when we were doing the group chat, George, you did mention that no one was nominating OK Computer, which is generally considered the foundation, seminal album or
Yeah.
whatever. I didn't ask anybody, but quick thing, top of your head, Flawless, yes or no?
Oh,
OK Computer.
Okay, computer.
Yes, if you can remember the songs, because we didn't do any research on it. So this is going to be... I can start. I don't think it's flawless. I think the last couple of songs don't live up to the rest of the album. So I think after No Surprises, I think there's like 3 more songs after that, and that goes on too long. I think they needed to finish it after No Surprises. I think if not on No Surprises, because No Surprises would be an amazing album ender. I think you're in that down mode, and they go on for a bit too long. So love it. Obviously, it's a huge album. It's an amazing album. It does amazing things that no one had thought to do before, and not many people have been able to do successfully since. But I wouldn't have called it flawless. As I was going through my research, just thinking about which of their albums I would call flawless.
I was actually listening to it this week, and I just said no because I don't think electioneering goes into climbing up the walls. Like,
Don't you hate electioneering? Was
like
you or someone else who told me
yeah,
to hate electioneering?
I don't hate like electioneering. It's more the fact that it gets in the way of climbing up the walls, which
Right.
comes next.
Grant's
And so
gonna
if I
quickly
have
look up
to,
some tracks
Yeah,
on it.
long song.
if I have to skip, like if I'm like listening to it, just like tapping my foot, just going, no, I really want to get to the good stuff.
Yeah.
You're getting in my way. Then the flow of the record isn't correct for me.
Yeah.
So there should have been something that segued between those two
Cool.
tracks, which is why
Yeah.
that wouldn't have been flawless for me.
There we go.
Yeah, it was the back end. Not probably agree with you. Just the front end was just so good.
Yeah.
Like, really, even up to Karma Police, and No Surprises on the back. But I thought the front end was just awesome, and then
Yeah.
the back end was like,
Yeah.
oh,
So that's often the thing that people talk about.
it's hard.
Yeah, so people talk about OK Computer being that seminal album, and that's where, when it's a couple of years after it came out, I was talking with a friend of mine that I was working with, and he and I both used to agree that it's bigger in scope than the Bends. It aims higher, but the Bends is more consistent musically, just all the way through,
Yeah,
cover to
that's
cover.
probably good,
So it's sort
probably
of
a good description.
they definitely aimed higher. So that's it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think I love the Bends more than OK Computer.
And they had to. Okay, compete. They couldn't have made Kid A after they made the Bends.
No, definitely not. There was a step between. So speaking of, they do OK Computer. It's one of the biggest albums in the world. Everyone's like, oh my God, what are they going to do next? And what they do next is pull the rug out from everybody and completely change their musical style, not for the first time, with Kid A and Amnesiac, which we won't go into too much detail. I love them both.
They
I
were
think they're
recorded
amazing.
concurrently, but
Yes.
they're released a year apart.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think they didn't even say they were doing Amnesiac at the time. I think they put out Kid A, and it was like, oh, wow, I wonder what they'll do next. And they were like, oh, and we've got a whole other set of songs from that same session. Here's another album as well, which is really cool.
Nice.
And then
We get to 2003.
we get to 2003.
Oh, and what's happening? What is
So,
happening?
In 2003, Radiohead. So I think they also put out I Might Be Wrong, which is their live album. So in 2003, they're on the tail end of a contract with EMI, which was like, I think that's where we talked about that 5-album contract. So it might have been OK Computer, Kid A, Amnesiac, I Might Be Wrong. And they're sick of working with EMI. They don't like working with EMI anymore. They keep trying to tell them to do stuff they don't want to do. They want to get out of the contract. So they put together an album called Hail to the Thief.
Mm-hmm.
Which, if I can find my notes.
Which I'd never heard before.
You'd never heard the album at all?
No, not until you asked me to listen to
Right.
it.
Okay.
Such was your conviction
Yeah.
of a flawless album
Yeah.
that I haven't heard of from Radiohead. Yeah.
So they moved to that, electronic style on the Kid A and Amnesiac, when they sort of recorded those with like studio experimentation and stuff like that. And then they're like, okay, well, let's try and do a bit more spontaneous stuff. So a bit of a combination between rock, like the analog rock style and the electronic digital style. They recorded it, most of it in 2 weeks in LA with Nigel Godrich, as we talked about before, and focused on just being able to do it live. Like if they could do it live, they tried to do it live in the studio and not, oh, let's put a sound down and then wander away and figure it out in the studio. So only 2 singles as far as I can remember. Yes. I should have put page numbers on my page. No, 3 singles.
3 singles. They're there. Go to Sleep and 2 + 2 = 5.
Yes.
Okay.
Which is just... So I love 2 + 2 = 5. That's another one of my absolute favourite songs.
Oh, such an opener.
Such a beautiful opener. Plugging in an amp to start an album, always going to be great. Just like,
No.
here we are, like, we're a live band first and foremost. And you can, that idea of like, oh, we're trying to capture the spontaneous energy of it a bit more live. And it's like, there it is. We're going to open this thing by plugging in an amp, noodling a little guitar, and then Tom York's vocals, and like really soft. And the first time you hear the album, you can probably tell us how you experienced it, Grant. But I know the first time I had it, I'd heard "They're There," but because that was the lead off single, but I hadn't heard anything else. And like they're playing with this noodly guitar stuff, and it's like, oh, is this going to be more like still the Kid A Amnesiac style stuff? Like you don't really know. And then just like that kickoff where the drums and all the other guitar parts just come smashing in, and it's so cool.
It's a good song. It's a great opening. Didn't get the double tick. Got a tick.
Got a heart. Got a heart from me.
Oh, there we go.
There you go. Got a heart. So
But you'd heard this before.
I'd heard some of it
Okay.
before, but I'd actually not listened to the whole record before.
Okay.
Oh.
So okay, cool story. We're talking
Yes.
about OK Computer going into today. So I had this like Pablo Honey. Okay, I've got you. You're grungy.
Yeah.
I know you're.
I know you.
I know you. The bend. Now I've really got you.
Mm.
OK Computer. You're pushing boundaries. I like what you're doing. Kid A came out. My mate bought it. He brought it over and went, listen to this. I cried.
Sadness.
I literally cried sadness and said, what have they done?
sad.
Oh no.
On the first listen of Kid A, because I was like, where has it all gone?
What
I
have
was
you
like,
done to me?
Where's the guitar
Are we
gone?
breaking up?
And I don't think you're the only. I think a lot of people had that reaction. It's like, this is not my Radiohead.
Yeah, it wasn't. I felt like they owed me
It's true, though.
something.
Yeah.
But then, like Kid A and Amnesia, I got totally into, but then my musical taste like meandered, so I never actually. And Radiohead just got bigger than the earth anyway, so I never actually followed them specifically. But I did hear certain tracks, and they're like on like TV shows or on radio and all that kind of stuff. So I definitely heard a couple of the singles, but I'd never heard the album all the way through.
Cool. So Grant, yeah, first time listening to the album all the way through. Just first impressions.
It's a grower.
Not necessarily songs, but first impressions. Just how it compares, I guess, to what you knew already had, and also what you know they'll become with your love of Rainbows as well.
So it's interesting because I probably, so if we go back in the chronology of it, you know, got 97 was OK Computer, and so I'm first year university, on the back of the Bends, and you know who doesn't from this era know the Bends.
Yeah.
This is OK Computer's like, whoa, this is a step out here as well, and you've got Karma Police and Paranoid Android, and you're like, okay, this is you know buzzing like a fridge, etc. And I might have heard parts of those other albums, Kid A and Amnesiac, is it?
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have listened to them at all. Like I couldn't tell you a song off either of those albums.
Yeah.
Because I don't actually know what I was doing for that period, for those years.
Don't record what you were doing during those years.
Yeah. There's no pictures. Thank goodness we didn't have phones or iPhones to take the pictures. So literally, I've gone 98 or 90. You know, the OK Computer piece ish, but I've loved the Bends and I never owned OK Computer, and then I've gone to In Rainbows, and now I'm going 3 years back to Hell to the Thief. And I'm like, well, what's this all about?
Yeah.
And so I've missed that part where the breakup. It's almost like we didn't break up. And they're a challenging band, I think, to listen to potentially, but also to pin down, because they want that. That's what they like, how they think they play it. So I'll go to speak specifically to number 5, Go to Sleep.
Yeah.
And I'm like, jeez, what a great opening riff. There's a movie called Singles, and Chris Cornell has on that a song called Seasons, and it's just that opening track is almost, or the riff's so similar. I'm like,
Nice.
I know that, like parts of that, and then
It's like
they'll
Americana.
go through the Singles, the movie.
No.
I mean, yeah, it's all America, sure. But you guys sit down, stand up, and that's a double tick off the bat. And I'm like, whoa, you know.
It has really lovely lyrics in that. Oh,
So that's on Go to Sleep.
on Go to Sleep. Was that
Yeah.
what we were talking about?
Oh, I thought we'd jump and sit
Sit
down.
down,
Stand up, but
stand
yeah.
up.
Oh, sorry. I
But
all
go
right.
to sleep as well, you know. I mean, it's just so it's challenging for like it's not. This is not in Rainbows, and this is
Yeah.
not the Bends, not even close.
Yeah.
And so of course I said for mine, it's a grower, because when it's got pieces here and pieces there that are familiar and then are not. So it was a bit challenging.
For me, this is the album where they took their rock side and their synthy digital side and meshed them together. And this was the first one where they've done that. So, you know, Kid A and Muzak were very much the digitals and the synths. Even if they were using the instruments,
Yeah.
everything was still super layered and super produced. Whereas this was more, we're going to see if we can find a way to jam together our two different sides. So 2 and 2 equals 5. Go to Sleep sounds like an old school, you know,
For
quote
sure.
unquote old school Radiohead song. Like you
Yeah.
could put that on one of their other albums and it would fit just fine.
I agree.
Even Backdress, like there's a bit of an echo noise in the background. It's a piece, but other than that, it's mostly just a more straightforward instrumentation.
Nice piano solo, yeah, and
Yeah.
backdrifts for sure.
And then they're there as well. So the single, that first single was the lead-off single. So it's like this beautifully, like you come out of the Turgid. So the Gloaming is that song in the middle where it's like a lot of synthy beats and just sort of him doing spoken word stuff. But then there's just this beautiful percussion back and forth. So the percussion on a lot of these albums is just so amazing. And,
With strings.
yes, they they do get a lot of strings going as well. They have that. It has that repeated motif of just because you feel it doesn't mean it's there, which I really love as well. But my favorite lyric is,
There's always a siren singing you to shipwreck. Steer away from these rocks. We'd be a walking disaster.
and it's just this beautiful, just like a little rhyming epithet sort of thing in the middle there. So, and then it picks up at the end, like the guitar, the more savage rock and guitar bit comes in at the end. So it's once again similar to sort of the Benz era style of stuff.
Yeah, with really nice harmonies that kick in as well at the end of that.
Yeah.
I mean, we suck young blood as well. I mean, that piano opening.
Yes.
And hand claps.
Yes.
Hello.
But so you love
Are you
hand claps.
hungry?
You love hand claps mostly, I assume, because they're poppy and fun and happy.
Yeah.
These are dread-inducing hand claps. Like there's a Greek chorus of people behind you, just like slow clapping, and like you're dreading the moment that their hands come together every time. It's
I'll
so
take
cool.
it. I'll fucking take it.
I love it.
Yep. And his vocals are like
Double tick for we suck
really
young blood.
strained kind of vocals on that one.
Yeah.
And the step change.
One of the things that happens a lot in this one is he's got long, slow, drawn-out vocals. So when you look at the lyrics for a song, it'll only be like 10 lines long. So even if it's 4.5, 5 minute song, he's just, in this album a lot, he's just doing the long, slow vocals. So it's just short on words. And then, so then it kicks up a notch. The tempo changes towards the end. And he starts doing the thrash around, which I talked about from Just. And he's
then
like,
goes back.
blah, 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 and then it just cuts out on a dime and goes straight back to the slower stuff again.
It's a cool one.
So, something I'll bring up now, the band don't like this album because they feel they rushed it to get it out, so they'd get it out so that
To get rid of the producers.
Yeah, to get rid of EMI. They were like, one last album done, gone, we're out. So they've said in the past that, they don't like it. We want to do things quickly. I think the song suffered. In 2008, York posted an alternative track listing on the website, admitting Backdrifts, We Suck Young Blood, I Will, which is one of my favorite songs. It's only like a little 90-second thing, and A Punch Up at a Wedding, which is also one of my favorite songs.
Yeah.
So I only knew this from doing the
double-tick as
research for this album that this is one they don't like in their catalog, but I don't care. I still love it so much. And the songs they're choosing to admit, that's crazy to me. They're like some of my favorite songs off.
You see
that
that
whole
they'd
album.
cut those ones.
Yeah. So let's just not have those
What's
ones.
the Backdrift, A Punch Up at a Wedding, and I Will.
And We Suck Young Blood.
And We Suck Young Blood.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
So
That's interesting.
yeah.
Well, it's
Okay.
bold to admit it after the fact, isn't it? Just be like, by the way, guys,
Yeah.
when you listen back, make a playlist, take those tracks out, and then it will be
That's what
happy.
we really wanted.
Yeah, that's where would be a happier state. But the synthie electro with the electric guitar and piano, jazzy soundings of A Punch Up at a Wedding.
Yeah.
That's fun. Repeating.
cool.
And his lyrically, it's sometimes like he's spitting. And then at the end, the only way I can describe it is the beep, beep, boop, boop noises.
Yes. So I said we were going to come back to this earlier. Those are the noises of an Onde Martenot,
Yes.
which Johnny Greenwood is a vintage instrument from the 1800s or something.
On which track?
Sorry. On this
Punch
one,
Up.
all the way through this album. So it was
Punch
invented
Up
in
at the Wedding.
1928 by Maurice Martenot. He was inspired by accidental overlaps of tones between military radio oscillators and wanted to create an instrument with the expressiveness of the cello with its easy use of vibrato. And Johnny Greenwood discovered one and was like, I want this to still be a thing.
And
so
I have all the money.
I have all the money I need.
Yeah.
And he got one, refurbished it, and it's all... So any of the sort of the synthy stuff and the beep beeps and that sort of stuff that you talked about,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure comes from the Onde Martenot.
Wow.
So...
Then, like a couple of bits, Scatterbrain. That's got lovely guitar and
Yeah.
drums. And then your vocals are really sweet above, kind of like walking around. And they pair back and they kind of repeat and have this like conversation throughout the track. And
Yeah.
it's only like 3 minutes or 2 minutes 20. But it's like a really nice penultimate song for the album.
Yes. And then the last song on the album is also one of my favorites, A Wolf at the Door.
Yes. 2 ticks.
Just this beautifully haunted track in 3/4 time. So it's always a little bit unnerving when it's like a 3/4 time song. And then I talked about most of the album being really slow, drawn out vocals. And this one, they're super fast. He's
Yes.
like spitting them out really quickly, almost stream of consciousness style. So it's sort of like a different, just like a real point of difference at the end. And then the chorus where he says, and it's going to be a long one, although it'll be shorter when he sings it.
I keep the world from the door. It calls me on the phone, tells me all the ways that he's gonna mess me up. Steal all the children up, but don't pay the ransom. I'll never see him again if I squeal to the cops.
Yeah, I love that bit.
So good. And that whole phrase gets stuck in my head all the time, and I'm just thinking to myself, because sometimes I forget little words that are in there. I'm trying to figure out what the on his
It's
vocal patterns is.
literally about like child kidnapping, right?
Yes.
Like literally a wolf at the door. Like that's a terrifying thing
Yeah.
to end an album on.
So the whole album is very political. So it's Hail to the Thief, which
Yeah.
was part the George Bush, when George Bush stole the election, his second election, George Bush
The first or the second?
Jr., I think the second election. So the one where there was a whole thing with
It was the
Florida.
first, wasn't it? Yeah, it was Florida. That was
the second one.
Was it really?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was.
And who was the opposing
Al
aide?
Gore.
Gore, that's right.
So
An Inconvenient Truth or something. with
yeah,
his-
so
with
he
his-
went on to do that. But yeah, so Hail to the Thief was the thing. But then, so they used that, but also just, their general anti-capitalism, anti-power sort of messaging and that sort of stuff. So they think of this as one of their most political albums. So A Wolf at the Door, I think, is almost sort of not just the wolf itself, but very much like the systemic stuff that's at our door
Yes.
all the time and, threatens to do stuff to us and is going to mess us up and all that sort of thing.
Well, can I just call on mixomatosis? Because
Yes.
it starts with a dirty bass line and ends with synthesizers, which is something you can't go wrong with.
Yeah.
Like, it's like a really great, it's really grizzly, and it carries through. The drums pick up, They have these like offbeat sections which make you feel slightly unnerved, like throughout the track. So like when I was listening to it, it was a bit like I was off my guard, like the way the percussion was being performed throughout myxomatosis.
So do you know what myxomatosis is?
That's the disease of rabbits.
It is the disease of rabbits. Highly infectious and usually fatal. Causes swelling of the mucous membranes and inflammation and discharge around the eyes.
Oh, no.
So he sings about they were cheering and waving, twitching and salivating, like with myxomatosis. So this idea that, you know, people with pitchforks and stuff like that are screaming and writhing around desperately trying to take out people and, you know, call to stuff. And it's
The
like,
mob mentality.
yeah, exactly. So
mob mentality.
yeah. So yeah, we've talked about, I said I really love I Will. It starts out with just his vocals and like this soul electric guitar. And then like I always thought it was York self-harmonizing, but I think it actually might be Johnny Greenwood. I've seen enough videos of them playing live now that Johnny Greenwood tends to do most of the harmonizing when I see them live, and he can do a lot of different stuff. So
And this is where he actually uses his variety of deep versus falsetto.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like,
Isn't his range frustrating?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hey?
I'm happy with that. Do you know what it makes him like? His range, it's not too far off my range. So when I go to rock karaoke, I can do Radiohead songs. So I'm pretty happy with that.
Nice.
There we
Thank
go.
you, Mr. York.
Yeah.
Is it Tom or Thom?
It is Tom. Because I've heard you call him Thom
Yes.
before. And I was like, I've always called him Tom, but I was never sure. So I went and looked up a bunch of videos, and
It's
he always
Tom.
calls, it's Tom.
Thom though.
People call him Tom, and in situations where I would expect him to say, hey,
No.
my name is Thom. So it is,
Well,
Tom. But yeah,
Tom, forgive me.
spelled with the H.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Excellent.
I'm George with a G.
Nice.
Yeah.
So just to wrap up, Hail of the Thief was the 5th consecutive Radiohead album nominated for a Grammy Award for Best Alternate Music, and Godrich and engineer Daryl Thorpe got the Grammy Award for Best Engineered Non-Classical Album. In 2010, Rolling Stone ranked it the 89th best album of the 2000s, and that's all I got. I do have one other thing, which we kind of... Oh, yeah, so Hottest 100 results. Nothing from the Bends, which is really weird, because Creep was in the 93 Hottest 100, and then, yeah, nothing from the Bends, except when they did 2009, they did a Hottest 100 of all time. Fake Plastic Trees got number 28.
What?
But it just wasn't in the countdown of its actual year. So anyway, that's a little weird.
That's cool.
2 + 2 = 5, and They're There in 2003 got number 49 and number 48. And then in 2007, Jigsaw Falling Into Place, which we'll talk about, got number 94. They've received 22 awards from 79 nominations. They've received 16 Brit Awards nominations. Received the Best Alternative Music Album Award 3 times at the Grammys for OK Computer, Kid A, and In Rainbows. They got the Best Art Direction for They're There at the MTV Video Music Awards. They got the Q Music Best Act in the World Today in 2001, 2002, and 2003. They were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2019, and they're the most nominated act in Mercury Prize history, having been nominated 5 times.
Wow.
So
Bloody underachievers.
bloody underrated. One of those bands that's big, and everybody seems to accept that they're big.
And like them anyway.
Yes. Cool. So, having completed their contract with EMI, they then they just sort of messed around a little bit, and then they came up with In Rainbows, which is where we went into you, Grant.
Yes. And we're on the basis on which this trio was formed. Some may say.
So it was the first album they released as pay what you want, download. They basically have done that for all their albums since then. There was a physical release through XL Recordings and TBD Records. Tell us about In Rainbows. Tell us about how did you encounter In Rainbows? Because the stuff on that didn't make a lot of radio airplay.
No.
Not that Hail to the Thief did either, but Triple J picked up a little bit of that stuff. But yeah.
So I suppose the story behind it is I migrated to Australia in March of 2006 and had a friend who'd mentioned In Rainbows in 07, 08, work colleague. And I was like, Radiohead, yeah. And again, my gap is, sort of OK Computer a bit, but the Bends, what's happening here? And I listened to this and I'm like, it's almost like I had missed that whole breakup period
Yeah.
that we could have broken up, but we didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I just loved it, to be honest. It's not one of the few albums where from the beginning I'm like, okay, well, it's a bit unusual, and it's just got this wonderful, I feel, mix from the opening track to the end.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing I would have, again, to pigeonhole Radiohead is unfair.
Yeah.
And virtually impossible. But from 15 step, off it goes.
Mm-hmm.
And a frustrating range that we know George can, in the main, pull off in pubs. And I've actually bought this CD twice.
Okay. Why is that?
Well, in an interesting / disappointing turn of events, the original was stuck in the car of my ex-partner, my ex-wife.
Yep.
And we in the splitting of assets, I couldn't eject in Rainbows from the compact display of the car.
Right.
And I was very sad, as one can imagine, because this is like right up there with a flawless album. And so I had to go out and buy it again, which is what you. So Tom and the boys, I do. Well, I had two versions of this.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much. It's been a staple for a significant period of time since then, basically. Since I probably heard it in 2008.
Cool.
And didn't get radio play, but
Yeah.
I've got there were 2 copies of it in my
Nice.
in your life.
Yeah, there were. Yeah.
George.
And,
Sorry. Had you ever heard In Rainbows? Listened to it in full before?
No, not in full. I'd heard Jigsaw falling into place.
Mm-hmm.
So when I put the album on, I was like, oh yeah, I know this one. Because that one kind of almost, to me, harked back to the OK Computer era.
Yeah.
So it felt really familiar. Whereas putting In Rainbows on, I was like, oh, okay, we're on this journey again. In the modern Radiohead.
Yeah.
And they're doing all their modern stuff. But when it started with 15 Step, it immediately starts with fun drums.
Yeah.
And when I was investigating that, they said that they wanted it to sound like a Peaches track. And I love Peaches.
Nice.
So she has a song called Fuck the Pain Away, and they wanted it to have that kind of sound.
Nice.
So I was instantly hooked. But the vocals are really sing-songy on 15 Step. And there's lots of lifts. So I was like,
Yes.
okay, there's groovy bass as well. So it's not just I'm a bass in the background, there's groovy bass. So I started with there and worked my way through the album, and we're only on 10 tracks for this one, and at 42 minutes, and I just hammered it out a fair few times over the last few weeks since we've been talking about this episode. So overall, my first impressions were, I'm going to give this a good hard crack. Thank you very much.
Nice.
cool.
So I'm assuming, Liam, you'd heard
Who
this.
owns the whole back catalogue, basically, from
I
Wind?
had heard it, and when I was listening to it again, I was like, oh yeah, I remember this song goes this way and this song goes that way. This came out when I was working at Faster Ladder and doing a lot of reviews and that sort of stuff there. And I remember at the time on the forums, people were saying, this is the best Radiohead album that they've put out. People who's not just randoms on the forum, but people whose musical tastes I respect.
Yes.
Well, this is their best album. Don't worry, Kid A and Amnesiac were great, but this is the one where they almost nailed what they were going for with that stuff. And I was like, okay, well, that's cool. So I remember listening to it at the time, and I think it combines the rock and the digital side again, but not in a more substantive way. It's not just here's the rock song, here's the digital song, which Hail to the Thief tends to do. So I didn't hear the rock side of it that I was listening for, and kind of went, okay, well, I'm not really that invested in it, and I didn't really pay a lot of attention to it. So I did listen to it. I remember listening to it and buying it because it was, I think I paid $10 or something to throw it on there.
Yeah.
But not ever being as invested in it as I was in their earlier stuff and Hail to the Thief. So yeah, as I was listening to it, and now when I was coming back, I was like, okay, so now I'm listening to it more in that listening for the similarities between Hail to the Thief and figuring out where they were going to go. And I really loved it, and really I think you do need to focus on it. It's not the sort of thing that you can just have on in the background and really get into.
Yeah,
you
I'll
really
give
need
you
to be
that.
listening to it and
Sure.
figuring out the levels, and even I had to look up most of the lyrics because it's not always easy to understand what he's saying.
Yeah.
But doing that, you get that same feel of like it's just those inner thoughts and looking at the world around him and doing it really well.
In Body Snatchers, which has a heart, that guitar is so muffy and dirty.
Awesome.
But like the drums feel really like clean and real. You know how because sometimes they use drum machines and like they put loads of synth sounds in, but that was like real percussion. And there's all these fun O's and oohs. And this was the one that had me going, oh, this sounds like a Queens of the Stone Age kind of track, Body Snatchers.
I need
I
to
was
listen
like,
to them more than
it was really awesome.
I really do.
He talked about, Tom York talked about this album being less angry and political. So the first Hail to the Thief was very political in as much as it could be from them. And this was more internal and introverted. But that can't include Body Snatchers because this is like this raucous, angry, him throwing himself around track. And I think like it's almost like if you had Hail to the Thief had 2 + 2 = 5 as the opener and then led into this one as its second track, like it would just fit perfectly well. Like it just, that fuzziness of it, the pure rock side of it, I think it would be all, switch them around or whatever, would have worked really well. It would have been amazing.
And then into Nude, which is like this dreamy.
Just one more thing on Body Snatchers.
Sure.
Awesome lyric. Again, just that, very direct, authority sucks, piss off. Yeah, really cool. But yes, Nude. Very, so you haven't heard Kid A and Amnesiac?
I couldn't name a track. So
if you like Nude, you'll love those albums because I think that Nude would fit right alongside on one of those albums. Just beautiful open spaces. Crafting those sounds with the instrumentation, it's really cool.
It harks back to like the old like 90s Massive Attack sounds.
Okay.
It's like if you think about like Teardrop or something like that, it's just those kind of like
That's Kid A and Amnesiac.
like some of that era was really lovely.
Yeah.
And I think there was some lyrics in there of
You paint yourself white and feel noise. There'll be something missing.
and I had this kind of image of like nudity and bridal imagery and stuff of being painted up white but still finding that there was an absence that was not going to get fulfilled. And which is like, I don't know if it's because I'm engaged and I'm looking for ways out of it. I don't know,
knows?
but yeah, that it just
A real Rorschach painting of a song, you reckon?
maybe I'm not actually trying to get out of it. It's fine. But yeah, I just thought it was a really, really pretty thing for him to put in.
That was the second single, in as much as they were still releasing singles. I don't know if they were actually doing CD singles. But I do know Radiohead, I don't know if they do it anymore, but they were one of the bands who were very big. We talked about Muse doing it as well on Japan releases and special editions for Japan only singles and stuff like that. But yeah, very unusual choice for a single. I wouldn't have picked it if
not at all.
Picked 2 songs. I would have gone with, I'm definitely Jigsaw. I would have gone with Body Snatchers as the other single if I'd known. But then I think Jigsaw and Body Snatchers might, if you're trying to tell people this is what's on the album, which is what singles were traditionally supposed to, listen to these, and if you like that, buy the album. If you listen to Jigsaw and Body Snatchers and go, I'll buy the album because it's more like that, you'd probably be disappointed.
You'd be pissing people off.
That's
for sure.
true.
But I mean, I'll go Reckoner, like flipping. I think it's a great track as well. Potential single, but yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, so Reckoner, once again, it's got that trip hoppy stuff, so like your Massive Attack style, big orchestral elements as well. Cuts out with for these really dark, intense vocals and harmonizing guitar part, and just really cool.
And then we have House of Cards, which is a jaunty little number, really indie with wood blocks and bowed strings being played and choruses of sound. And there's so much experimenting with the effects and harmonies on House of Cards. So I was like listening to it going, do I like it? Do I not like it? Do I like the song? And every time I listened to it, I was unsure if I liked the song or not.
Ah.
It was really interesting. It was just like the layers worked this time, but the layers didn't work next time. So I was like having like a
Wow,
little, a little
I
journey.
like the lyrics. What's it? Forget about your house of cards, and I'll do mine. I'm like, that's a cool lyric. Like just, but one man's opinion.
I really love Weird Fishes / arpeggio. Arpeggio. So I had to look up what arpeggio meant. Does people know?
No, I've never looked it up.
The scale.
So what it means specifically is
Arpeggio's a scale, I thought.
yeah. The sounding of the tones of a chord in rapid succession rather than simultaneously. So instead of strumming a chord, you pick the notes of the chord one after the other.
Oh, look at you go.
And then a chord played or sung in this manner. So I think they kind of it reminded me of REM's Ebo the Letter.
Oh, yes.
Where the name of the song is The Letter, and they played the instrument, the Ebo, on it. So they just called it Ebo The Letter. I guess like in a draft thing somewhere, maybe they played a version without the Ebo, and they had to try and remember which one was a version, which one was what. So they were like, this is the guitar, The Letter, and this is Ebo The Letter, and they kept that one. Like, that sounds cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it uses a thing that they do throughout, less so in the bends, but definitely in the later ones, which is just repetitive. That repetitive, like the same vocal line or the same guitar or the same synth bit, just repeated over and over as a way to create a space, which I think works really well.
And in Weird Fishes, it's I'll hit the bottom, and escape.
Mm-hmm.
That's how he gets out.
So I think that one, I thought for me, that one was like, you guys know the anglerfish, which is the one they find all the way down at the very, very bottom of the oceans, which has the light on it.
Yeah.
And then, they all come to the light, and it turns out the light is actually a thing that's going to kill them.
Stay away from the light.
Because I think he talks about at the start that he's following something, looking for meaning. And I think that's like the weird fishes, is like these crazy fishes we find at the bottom of the ocean that look horrific.
And then he's got some creepy vocals in Faust Arp over the acoustic guitar and strings. Then there's like a sweet lift, but the vocals constant. But the guitar picking in that one is really beautiful, and I love the strings. So that was a really nice one. And it was only 2 minutes long.
Yeah. So that was like the I Will on Hail to the Thief, just like a short, sharp vocals and one guitar piece and a little something else as well. But just like a little idea for a song that they're like, yeah, it's enough to have it, but we don't need to flesh it out any more than that. Any other double ticks, Grant? With your
Look,
album?
I mean, I'll propose this flaw. So, Jigsaw falling into place is obviously the radio one, which I wasn't actually aware of. I hadn't looked up that hard into it. I probably like what resonated me most with this album was the flow catches you like unaware. It isn't like to go 15-step body snatches, nude, and then Weird Fish is All I Need, which is also like this sort of mellow track, fast up, and then you've got Reckoner, which is like you're thinking, where's this journey going? And just keeps you on your toes. So no, I don't really have anything else from mine. Videotape, which is a very somber
love Videotape.
Really,
So cool.
hey?
Yeah, just piano led.
Yeah,
so that reminds me of Pyramid Song from Amnesiac, which is piano led as well.
You wouldn't know that one, yeah.
Know that one, but yeah. And then, but the percussion, the tape,
it's challenging.
The tape deck percussion, it is. It's a challenging. It's like the old, and not old school tape as in VHS, but like old school, like on a reel.
Yeah.
Things that like they're clicking off one and they're clicking onto the other, and it's clicking off one and it's just really, and it just really disconcerting. And it's on the offbeat. The second beat of each one is on an offbeat, which is really just so cool.
It's a big way to close. Like I felt like I listened to this one in prep, obviously, again, and I was like, hey, is this the way that I want this to end again? And I'm like, but this is almost like their modus operandi. Is that you take this journey, and it isn't, Street Spirit Fade Out is not a happy way to end, and this is not a happy way to end.
Yep.
And that's okay.
Wolf at the Door is not a happy way to end.
Exactly. You know. So then I was like, no, we're cool. We're fine. So,
but in keeping with this being our 100th episode, he sings, "This is my way of saying goodbye, because I can't do it face to face. I'm talking to you before." But we're coming back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we're coming back. I love the very last lyric of the album, which is,
Cause I know today has been the most perfect day I've ever seen.
because that sounds like a happy, uplifting, optimistic lyric, but the way he sings it and the way it's delivered and the song that it's on and the album that it's on is not.
No.
It's not
No.
that at all. It's just, yeah, I love it. Defying expectations.
Very much so. And the first big album or big group, I suppose, to say, pay what you want.
Yes,
Really nice.
yeah, definitely.
Like, and that was certainly intriguing for me. And back in 2007, 2008, like, what do you mean? Like, how do you even do that?
Yeah,
Like, I don't understand.
but I will say, so yeah, the thing I will say is that, because there was a lot of hullabaloo around that at times, like, oh,
Yeah.
you know, because that was also when music piracy was probably super huge. Like, we probably had Spotify by then, but it was still really a really big thing and a really big conversation piece about should we stop it. And then they released that, and they were like, oh, and they're all the other people who wanted to keep pirating were like, see, Radiohead can do it. It's like, yeah, Radiohead built a supporter base of millions of people.
Millions.
When Radiohead goes out and goes, pay what you want for our album, 1 million people will pay $5 for it, and you're done.
Yeah.
Most
Done.
bands can't afford to do, although a lot of bands still do give their stuff away for free. You can't just go, well, it works for Radiohead, therefore it should work
No.
for the entire industry. It's not going to,
No.
it's just not applicable.
Correct. No, not at all.
George, any other thoughts about In
Yes.
Rainbows before we jump to our final set of pictures?
No, I think we've covered off all the tracks that I've got my little hearts on, so
Cool.
we are good to go.
Okay. Well,
Awesome.
you are up with you. You've arranged the notes across the
In-
lounge on the
in
different
chrono-
songs. We'll do
chronological
chronological again. Yeah.
order,
So
sure.
we'll go back to George for the final pitch for In Ben's.
The
Bends. In Ben's and The Rainbow.
Yes.
Go for it.
Okay, so the bands went 4 times platinum in the UK, which is phenomenal. It is an album that stands the test of time. People are still listening to it today. They're still harking back and covering the songs. They're doing karaoke in the valley right now of songs off this album. Because even though it came out in 95, people are singing high and dry, and they're really trying to hit those notes. And they're really not hitting
Most of
those
them
notes.
failing.
Yeah. It's a massive
Substantial
failure.
amount of failing.
Absolutely. And as we said, we have 7 of the tracks turned out to be singles from a 12-track album in 95 when they were like hanging off of Creep, like literally the self-deprecating Creep weirdo of Pablo Honey. They brought in string arrangements that they actually, Johnny and Tom helped to organize the string arrangements for this album. They brought in people specifically for the cello, viola and violin so that they didn't have to use synthesizers for everything. And they wrote perfect songs, and you can go from Planet Telex all the way through to Street Spirit, and you can enjoy every song on its own. You can enjoy it as the journey that they've placed it from start to finish. You can put it on shuffle, or you can put it on shuffle with every other album that you own in your like device right now, and you will say that's from the Bends, and you'll just know it. So that's why when we said Radiohead, I had to say the Bends. That's my pitch.
Nice.
That's why I think it's flawless.
Awesome.
The pitches have got a lot better, huh? Like, that's a great pitch. Well done. Thank you.
It wasn't
awesome.
prepared. I was just speaking from the heart.
Well, and maybe that's a lesson for us all, you know?
Very good.
Sure.
Okay. Well,
Grant,
What about me?
final thoughts on the Bends and a thumbs up or a thumbs down?
Look, it's weird, and it's weird to talk of an album that's 20-something plus years old, huh? That I first held in in a different country at school, and you were, I appreciate, much younger. I wanted, I listened to it to declare it, a desire to make it not flawless, because I think it is flawless, and I wanted it to not.
It's the Australian tall poppy thing you want to.
Like, no, not even, no, like, because I've listened to it so much.
Yeah.
Like I haven't listened to Health the Thief at all, nearly, and even in Rainbows, nearly as much. Like, this is iconic almost for that period. So I have to say, of course, that it is flawless, absolutely. It's just a wonderful, wonderful album. I listened all the way. I get to Black Star and I'm like, yes, and I want Sulk to be, and it's not. And then I want to not like
Sulk we didn't get to talk about, but it's still amazing.
It
Yeah,
is.
it's still
It
so
is.
good.
It is amazing.
Yeah.
Like sherbet, and I've tried to play high and dry on the guitar, and my range might just be a little bit low to get it. But it's an amazing album, and it is absolutely flawless. So thank you. Nothing more to say, really.
Cool.
Liam, on your way, bud. Come
Yeah.
on.
Bring it.
So I'm gonna a lot of people don't like Pablo Honey. People who got to Radiohead through OK Computer or the Bends listen to that and go, well, it's not that. It's not the Bends and it's not OK Computer, so I don't like it. I like Pablo Honey because it's 5 kids from uni fucking around on guitars. Like they're still at that point they're still a pub band. They've got Creep as a Big Cookie single, but at that point they're still a pub band. How they became the Bends era Radiohead 2 years later, I will never understand. Because it's mostly still just the 5 pieces of the instruments, 2 guitars, a bass, a singer, and a drummer. But these songs are just, there's nothing like them.
The quantum leap.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And it's just, they're using the same instruments that everybody else is using. They're doing roughly the same song construction. There's a lot of verse, chorus stuff
Straight
on
180.
this album.
Yep.
But the way they bring it together and the layers that they use is just amazing. And I'm just like, I'll just cut to the end and it's absolutely flawless.
Yes, it is.
And I nearly blurted it out before because I've been listening to this album constantly for like the last 20 years. Every now and again it just comes up and I go, oh yeah, listen to that. I just go, holy fuck. It's just, I don't understand how they make it so great as just the same. They're using the same pieces that everybody else has, but they're just so brilliant at all the pieces that it becomes a different kind of experience. And that's why, like, yeah, you're right. Listen to it beginning to end. I think it might be unique among our flawless albums in that the order is important, but also not important. You could just shuffle it and it's just an amazing
it's a
collection
good
of songs.
point.
Street Spirit probably has to be last, but you can probably put a couple of other songs up first and open with like a different riff and it would still just be amazing. So yeah, 100% flawless.
Jeez.
I might cry.
Yeah.
Cry, do
might
it.
have a
That's
cry.
okay.
Cool.
On to Hell to the Thief.
On to
bud.
Hail to
One
the
for
Thief.
one.
So we've been running, this is a super long episode, so I won't go into a huge amount of detail. I've talked about all the stuff that I love about it. I really, really love the idea that they've got these 2 sides to them, their rock side and their what I call their analog and their digital side. Okay. And in all their previous albums, that's sort of they're exploring different sides of those 2 spaces, but usually a bit separately. And this is the first one where they bring those sides together. And some of the songs, they don't jam them together like digital and analog, like it's either a rock song or it's the more synthy song. But I still love all the songs that are on there. I love I love 2+2=5. I love the opening and sit down and stand up, like the big crescendo that it comes into that we didn't get to talk about. Love the back half with Punch Up at a Wedding, the slow hand claps of like just taking all these elements that belong in individual Radiohead songs and really playing with them and using them. I think his vocals would work really, really well. I think it's amazing, again, that it's still just the same 5 guys using those same 5 pieces that everybody else uses as well. And then finishing on A Wolf at the Door with that horn and the noise going up and down works just amazingly. So, like I said, Ben's is probably my favorite Radiohead album, but I think this one gets overlooked by a lot of people, including the band, and I don't care that they said that they don't like it as much.
They're wrong.
I still think it's a flawless album, and there's nothing that I would cut if I was listening to it all the way through.
Awesome.
Nice.
Go the other, Grant.
Sure. Again,
Final thoughts on Hail to the Thief and thumbs
first
up
one
or
up.
thumbs down.
I look, Hail to the Thief, I hadn't heard at all. Like nothing. So I feel like I'm underdone in terms of the sheer volume that you've gone through in getting yourself to this point. That said, having listened to it now, I was like, there is an area or an air, forgive me, of familiarity around a lot of the stuff. Having referenced it earlier, I didn't have that little breakup period, so I look down here and there's double ticks like all over the shop, man, and it's not. It's almost like the precursor to my my proposed album, whereby it challenges you and there's familiar, but I'm going to push you here or I'm going to push you there, and the reference to digital and analog, or however you want to call it, is probably very appropriate. So I loved it. I've got flawless, fun, done, easy.
Cool.
Thank you, and I really enjoyed it. I've made a lot more notes than I normally make, and Yeah, it was great. So thank you.
Awesome.
Flawless. Done. Easy.
Awesome. Okay.
Cool.
So, I went on a real journey with this album because I came from amnesiac and I left everything
Yeah,
for
I
a
never
while.
had it.
And then kind of like missed everything. And then
You were sad.
yeah, and then I was like, oh, okay, here we are. So I was like really grateful that albums were put forward that I was like, I'm listening to Radiohead again.
Yeah.
Like new ones, and they weren't all making me cry. So that was really cool. So there are hearts and hearts and hearts all over here. But what was interesting is when Tom talked about like feeling rushed, there was just one song. And I really hate doing this, but there was one song,
Which one? Oh.
Which one?
Backdrifts.
Ah, okay.
No.
It was Backdrifts. I couldn't hook it. Like there was nothing for me to like get my little hooks into in there.
Not even the piano solo.
No, it just there's a soundscape, and it was really nice, but like there was nearly 5.5 minutes. And I needed it to like pair back and move in, or I needed to jump and I wanted to just go straight to Go to Sleep, because Go to Sleep, that Americana guitar, I knew that was coming up next, and I was just like, I'm waiting for that little bad boy. So I can see why the band think it, and as an album, I think it's fucking incredible. And I've got that one little gripe, but there's nothing else I would change about a thing. So I think it's awesome. So thank you for bringing it to me.
No problem at all. Lucky last.
Lucky
Grant,
last.
Final pitch for In Rainbows.
Look, 2007 album In Rainbows. I thought a challenging album. They broke up the EMI, as you've referenced. This first one, there's a whole lot of hype about pay what you want for it. And
this was one of the ones where they tried to work with a different producer and did a little bit of work with them and just couldn't get the vibe. So they went back to Nigel Godrich.
And, 10 songs, 42 minutes. It's different in terms of the flow from the bends. It's not as straighty 180. I feel as that. It's a bit of a challenging listen. And I think as an album, it's got something for everyone. From that opening track where he is up there in his range to videotape at the end, which can be a challenge to listen to. I think it's got something for everyone. And for that reason, I think it's flawless. So
Cool.
George, please.
Hello. Okay, so I found In Rainbows way more accessible than I expected it to be.
Okay.
Because I listened to Hell to the Thief first, and so I listened to In Rainbows, and I found it way more accessible. And 15 steps started, and I was like, "Yep, I like this." And then Body Snatcher started, and I'm like, "Yep, I like this." Then Nude caught me by surprise, and I was like, "What are we doing here, boys?
Where are we going now?
Where are we going?" But I was like, "No, you're the third track." So we've got our big 2 numbers at the beginning, then we've got a third track, and then you're taking me on a journey, and you're taking me on a journey in 42 minutes, and there's nothing I'd take out, and there's nothing I'd put in, there's nothing I'd move around. So for me, In Rainbows is an album that I would deem flawless and will be going on my record player for sure.
Nice.
So yeah, it was really cool. And also, I love rainbows in general, and I'm quite disappointed that I have not listened to this album before.
And it doesn't actually have a song called In Rainbows.
About rainbows.
In there.
They're too optimistic. Rainbows make people happy, and that's not what we're about here at Radiohead.
No. Liam,
Yes.
over to you, sir.
So, I found this album good, frustratingly good, because
What a description.
I remember I described it before. I'd heard the album, and then I was like, it didn't really stick with me because I was like, I'm still on Hail to the Thief, I'm still on that. So then I didn't really gel into it. And then when we were talking,
That's 4 years later, man.
I know, but I was still
Like
on
you stuck 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so when we were like, I'm thinking, how am I going to pitch Hail to the Thief to you guys? And I'm talking about, it's the album where they mix analog and digital. They take their 2 sides and they merge them together. And I'm listening to In Rainbows, and I'm like, no, this is the album where they get their two sides to merge together. Hail to the Thief is the one where they switch between analog and digital a lot. This is the one where they actually, like, there are songs on this album, we talked about them, that fit on every album from their past career. There's songs on this that could go on OK Computer. There's songs on this that could go straight into Kid A Amnesiac. There's almost like a Body Snatchers, you could almost put it back on the Bends. Like, there's songs all the way through this that just fit. And so I was just like listening through it going, I love this hook, I love that hook. And it's just like, it took the thing that I wanted Hail to the Thief to be and like took it to the next level, which I was like, well, if it's that, then there's no way I couldn't say that it was flawless. So of course, absolutely In Rainbows is flawless.
Yes! On the 100th episode. Stop it. Jeez, shake my hand. 100th episode. And for those listeners who may have missed one or two, this is the first time that Granty's got one across the line.
And don't you deserve it, young man?
You've worked hard. And it was the same thing. It was like, it feels like I don't want to give Grant his first one on the Radiohead album. Because it's like,
on his cherry.
That's the pitching the albums that everybody loves. But it's an amazing album that I was able to discover for the first, like, to really understand. And we went out to Roma a couple of weeks ago, so I had Radiohead stuff on in the car, and I was just like, this is pretty good, this is pretty good. No, wait, this is flawless, and there's nothing you could change or take out or be different. Like, it's just, yeah. And I like that you talked about challenging, but just in all the right ways, so yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing it and nominating it.
I'm going to crack another beer now because of that one. Thank you.
Hail the Bends across the line.
Yes.
Hail to the Thief, not quite. In Rainbows across the line.
2 out of 3 ain't bad.
Any other final thoughts before we sign off for our 100th episode?
I think Radiohead should be proud of themselves tonight. I think they've done a cracking job.
Yes.
Thank you.
They're about to finally get some of the recognition they deserve after
time. Like for all those listeners out there who've never heard of Radiohead before, this is a really good opportunity to get stuck into some of their seminal work.
And there might be some people out there who haven't, and in which case you'll have heard some musical samples from across the spectrum when we've talked about the different styles. So the cool thing about Radiohead is you can go and find an album that suits the style of stuff that you like to listen to.
You really could.
So,
you really could.
Yeah, go and give it a listen.
Enjoy, guys.
All right. Thank you, George and Grant, for 100 episodes of awesomeness. We will be back in the new year for 100 episodes more. And a very special thanks, I forgot to say at the start, to all our guests, for everyone who's come on and hung out with us at the State Library, in George's room at Garden City. All the places guests have been willing to come. The ones who've come in from overseas as well. Thank you very much to everybody. It's been a real pleasure doing the podcast with everybody.
Humbling.
Yes, and we look forward to another 100 episodes starting next year. We want to thank everyone for listening. We have Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We are Flawless AMP on all of those, so you can check us out there. Leave us a rating. Every little bit you do helps us to find more music lovers like you, especially if you can share our posts for these special 100th episodes. That would be awesome. And of course we have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/flawlessamp. So check us out there if you can. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.